So basically, I've just picked a topic from Irish history, and I'm going to go through. I won't go too long now because it is everybody's Saturday night, and I'm sure you don't want to hear me talking for 2 hours. So I'll just do a 30 to 40 minute presentation on a topic from Irish history. And my proposal is going forward, like every 2 months, we'll have something, and it can be anybody, anybody from the Malay group or interested in the Malay family can do a presentation. It doesn't even have to be on Malays, or it doesn't even have to be history, but anything at all, basically. And so that's the idea. So I'm going to go through this here anyway. And the topic for tonight, dare I say, it's a formation of Ireland's traditional provinces from ancient times to present. Now, I just noticed that again on the Malay meetup there in July. There's a lot of knowledge in the group, a lot of knowledge and history in the group, and I just thought it'd be good to kind of get that going. But anyway, so I'm going to go through how the Ireland's provinces were formed from ancient times to present, and I'm going to compare basically the oral tradition and mythology, and also the actual tradition as well. So just moving forward from that anyway, that's the topic of tonight's lecture. Now, so here's the 4 provinces today. Just to check once more, everybody can see this and everybody can hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Yep. If you, like yourself, Des and Tom, you have obviously dialed in. You won't be able to see this, but you can listen and hopefully, from what I'm saying, things will make sense. So listen away. So anyway, so these are the 4 provinces today, basically. And for those that don't live in Ireland, they might be familiar with it. But the 4 provinces is a big thing in Ireland. It's quite a traditional thing. It goes back to ancient times. But today, anyway, we have 4 provinces. We've got Ulster in the north, we've got Connacht in the west, Munster in the south, and Leinster in the east and the southeast. And the island is divided into counties. There's 32 counties. And those 32 counties are spread across provinces. So that's the provinces today. Now I'm going to look at them in ancient times. Just for some information, there are different place names around the world named after Ireland's provinces. Like, for example, in Canada, there's the township of Connacht in Ontario in Canada. There's the township of Munster in Indiana, USA. There's the town of Ulster in New Jersey, USA. And I know there's a few people from New Jersey, you might know of that town. And there's the town of Leinster in Western Australia. So there you are, different places in the world named after Ireland's provinces. And also New Zealand. So the 3 main islands of New Zealand, believe it or not, were originally named after Ireland's provinces. So what's now the North Island of New Zealand was originally called New Ulster. And the South Island was called New Munster. And there's a small island off the south. It's now called Stewart Island, and it was originally called New Leinster. So there you go. So New Zealand's islands were originally named after Ireland's provinces. Now, this, according to tradition, I'm just showing a map. This, according to tradition, is what is meant to be the first boundaries of Ireland's provinces. You're talking Bronze Age. Now, it's based on the oral tradition, and they were drawn by people called the Firbolg. Now, anybody that's familiar with Irish mythology and history might have heard of the Firbolg. But they're meant to have all been originally bounded by rivers. And the rivers that formed the provinces were the Erne. Now, the Erne is a river in the northwest of Ireland. The Boyne, that's a river in the east of Ireland. The Noe, that's in the south of Ireland. The Shannon, that's the longest river in Ireland, rises in the centre of Ireland, runs down to the island and exits in the southwest. And there's also the Brosnan and the Inny. And of course, in ancient times, it would have made sense for the provinces to be bounded by rivers because rivers are a natural feature. And they met in the centre of the island, a place called Ishnock. So Ishnock is an ancient site. And I'll just speak about that shortly. But comparing the ancient provinces based on tradition, what's now Longford was actually part of Connacht. What's now Louth was mostly part of Ulster. And what's now Clare was Munster. So that was the first boundaries of Ireland's provinces. And there was also another province. And at one stage, there was a line that ran from what's now Limerick City to Cork City. That's the mouth of the Shannon and the mouth of the Lee. And Munster was actually partitioned in 2 in ancient times by the Firbolg as well. So that's that there now. So just moving forward anyway. And these are the rivers I mentioned. So, I see I have a cursor. Anyway. So here we have the River Erne. For those, dare say, who are not familiar with Irish geography, that's the River Erne. The River Erne is in northwest Ireland, and that was the original boundary between Ulster and Connacht. We have the Boyne. This is the River Boyne. It's in East Ireland, and that was the original boundary between Leinster and Ulster. We have the Nore. This is the River Nore here. Runs through West County Kilkenny, and that was the original boundary between Leinster and Munster. We have the Shannon. The Shannon is Ireland's longest river. This is the Shannon here. The Shannon up to Lough Ree was the boundary between Connacht and Leinster and Munster. And then we had the Brosna as well. The Brosna was a boundary of, in here was the original 5th province of Meath. It was actually a very small province around Ishnok. And there was the Inny. The River Inny is this river here. So they were the original. And the Firbog are said to have created Ireland's province boundaries using those rivers. There's also the Slieve Blue Mountains. There's Slieve Blue Mountains. So the full boundary of Munster, Leinster ran via the Nore and the Slieve Blue Mountains up to the Brosna, where you had the original smaller province of Meath. Now, moving on. So I don't want to bore you too much, but according to Irish mythology, there are 7 waves of people that are meant to come to Ireland in ancient times. And they are the Fomorians, the Kesser, the Partholon, the Nemid, and the Firbog, the 2 of the Danann and the Maleesans. So they're meant to have come to Ireland in ancient times. We're talking BC, And according to mythology, the Firbog came in the early Bronze Age. And these stories and traditions were written actually down by the Irish monks. Now, there was a Christian slant put onto it, and the name of the different names of books that the monks wrote were called the Laur Gwail Éireann. That's Irish language, and it means the book of the taking or the invasion of Ireland. Now, it's a page from the Book of Leinster. That's one of the books that the monks wrote. Now, they did put a Christian slant on us, and they took the rich oral tradition from the older Druids, and they kind of changed things a bit, but there still is a lot of truth from what was being said. So that's it there. So going on anyway. Just keep an eye on the time. But don't want to. Now, believe it or not, Ireland, the island of Ireland was formed geographically 440 million years ago. And Ireland was actually 2 different land masses. So the north of the island and the south of the island were originally on 2 different completely land masses, and the 2 came together. Wow. But believe it or not, where the 2 came together, I'm just showing us on this map here, hopefully you can see it, where the 2 came together, the seam where the 2 parts of Ireland come together, doesn't far off match the actual boundary of the Firbog provinces. So I just think that's interesting, Today you can actually find different folds in Ireland where you can see where the 2 land masses came together. So near the mouth of the Boyne at Clogherhead, there's a place called Clogherhead, but there you can actually stand in the beach, look at the land, and you can see the folds come together. But on both parts of the island, there's actually 2 different types of rocks. And it wouldn't surprise me in ancient times if the ancient Irish knew that there was something and kind of knew that there's different rocks and different types of, rocks on both parts of the island. And maybe perhaps that's why one of these boundaries by the Firbog was created. And it's just worth mentioning anyway. So moving on anyway. Now, this is the Hill of Ishnok. The Hill of Ishnok is an ancient site. Now, if you look at this map of Ireland here, Ishnok is pretty much geographically centred in the centre of Ireland. And this was positioned long before we had sat-navs and all these kind of things. And it's very interesting that in ancient Ireland, that the ancient Irish were able to put Ishnok in such a central location. Now, it is meant to be, you might have heard of Tara. So Tara is another site, and it's associated with the High Kings of Ireland. But Ishnok is meant to have been the seat of the High Kings before Tara. And it was the Firbog seat of the High Kings of Ireland. Again, look at the geographical centre location of it. But as well as that, there's 4 other sites around Ishnok. You have Awan in the north, which it was the seat of the Kings of Ulster. We have Croghan in the west, the seat of the Kings of Connacht. We had Dunolnia in the east, the seat of the Kings of Leinster. And we had Knockanya, that was an older seat of the Kings of Munster. That was later replaced by a place called Cashel. But look at this symmetry between the 4 locations on Ishnok. You wonder, is that a coincidence? So I think in ancient Ireland, they either had a lot of time on their hands, or had incredible knowledge of the lands, that they were overseeing. Now, Ishnok, even though it's said to have become the seat of the High Kings in the Bronze Age, the site is much older. The site actually goes back 5,000 years. It's a Neolithic site. Neolithic means New Stone Age, and there's remains of a passage chamber in Ishnok as well. So that's that there now. So moving on, and just there at the top right, just to compare, that's the provinces as of today, and the one to the left, that's the ancient provinces said to have been created by the Firbog. Now moving on, in Ishnok as well, there's this stone, and it's called the Stone of Divisions. So this is the Stone of Divisions anyway, and it's actually said to represent the original 5 provinces of Ireland, believe it or not. So, and this stone here, the top is meant to be Ulster. We're comparing it here now. This is a later map of Ireland where Meath actually expanded. But this top stone is said to represent Ulster. This stone over here is said to represent Connacht. This stone here is meant to represent Meath. This stone here is meant to represent Leinster. And there's two from Munster, because Munster apparently was originally two provinces when the Fir Bolg first created them. So that's the stone of divisions. In Irish, it's Island Merlin. So that's it there now. So moving on, right? Now, then after the Fir Bolg, people called the Tuatha Dé Danann are meant to have come to Ireland. Now, again, just for a reminder here, we have the 7 waves that are meant to come to Ireland according to Irish mythology. And the second last was the Tuatha Dé Danann, and they're meant to have come in the mid-Bronze Age. And whenever they came, they're meant to have relocated the site of the High Kings from Uisneach to Tara. And Meath was expanded east to the sea. So Meath was expanded, and land was taken from Ulster and Leinster, and a bit of Munster as well, actually. So yes, the seat of the High Kings was meant to be relocated from Uisneach to Tara. Now, going round that as well, we have other sites. This is Cashel. This is actually a later seat of the High Kings of Munster. I already mentioned Croghan or Rathcroghan for Connacht, Owen Waka, Ulster, Dun Alnia for Leinster. But anyways, just moving on. This is the Hill of Tara. So this is the site here in the east of Ireland, which for the Tuatha Dé Danann are meant to have moved the seat of the High Kings to there. It's actually a very interesting site. It's quite spread out. There's a lot of history there. At Tara, there's a stone here, which I'm showing, called the Lia Oi, the Stone of Destiny. And the High Kings are meant to be incarnated in that stone in ancient times. Now, as well as that, even though it's said to have been first used by the Tuatha Dé Danann in the mid-Bronze Age as the seat of the High Kings of Ireland, again, it has a much older history. And there's a 5,000-year-old Neolithic passage chamber there as well. And later, the site is said to have been also used by later people called the Milesians, and then also used by the O'Neill dynasty as the seat of the High Kings of Ireland. So that's that. And so moving on then, so yeah. Now, this is a guy called Ptolemy. Now, it's spelled with a P. The P is silent. This is Ptolemy. Ptolemy was an Egyptian, a Greek-speaking Egyptian from the city of Alexandria in the north of Egypt. And he lived during the time of the Roman Empire, and he worked for the Roman Empire. But he created the very first map of Ireland. So this is a map of Ireland, Hibernia in Latin, dated between 100 and 170 AD. And on that map, it shows different rivers and it shows different tribes on the map. So that's the first map of Ireland. Now, moving on, now this is the map of Ireland with those tribes mentioned. But what's interesting is on that map, 2 of the tribes are actually names of Ireland's provinces. The first one here is the Nagneti. The Nagneti in the west. And now the Nagneti, Connacht in the west of Ireland, was originally known, actually, there's an old name for Connacht. It was known as Isle Knockmacht. So Isle Knockmacht is an older name for Connacht. And it's mentioned via kind of a crux former Latin from this guy who mapped Ireland. So it's interesting that that's shown on this early map of Ireland. And also up in the north, we have the Ullantee. Now, originally, note V and U was the same letter. That's why there's a V. But Ullantee matches Ulster. Ulu is Ulster in the Irish language. So it's interesting that this first map of Ireland had 2 tribes which match 2 of Ireland's provinces. And just for comparison, in the bottom right, that's the map of Ireland's provinces today. Now, moving on again. Now, then after that, again, we have the 7 waves of people are said to have come to Ireland. The later wave was called the Milesians. The Milesians are said to come in the late Bronze Age. And the Milesians are said to have divided Ireland into 2 provinces. In the north, we had what was called Lac Con, and the south was Lac Mugga. There were 2 provinces. And the boundary between those 2 provinces ran via a natural feature which runs across the length of Ireland called the Escarriada. And it's a series of glacial eskers left from the Ice Age that run from east to west in Ireland. So natural formation was used to create the 2 Milesian provinces of Ireland. And just for reference, there's the Kingdom of Ferkel. Now, where's my cursor gone? The Kingdom of Ferkel, Malloy Kingdom, it was just south of the Escarriada. So it was in the southern province of Lac Mugga. So moving on anyway, and believe it or not, these are pictures of the Escarriada. So this is, you can see it there now. So that's where a boundary, we've got different lakes either side over there. And here there's a depression. So that's the Escarriada. And the Escarriada, it crossed the Shannon at Clonmacnoise. Clonmacnoise, it was the most prominent monastery in Ireland. But Clonmacnoise is where the Escarriada crossed the Shannon. And Clonmacnoise on the map is just here. Now, even in Ireland, there were ancient roads in Ireland. This is a map of ancient roads. This is like a later map. And there was a road called the Sliamore, it was called, and it ran along the Escarriada. Just throw it in, just thought it would be interesting. Now, moving on, So up into the Normans, basically, Ireland traditionally was always seen of having 5 provinces. Again, Ulster in the north, Connacht in the west, Munster in the south, Leinster in the southeast, and then the province of Meath in the kind of centre and east. And despite the fact that there were several other kingdoms had arrived, and really the province system was kind of things were moving away from the province system, but the local people still use the provinces, the 5 provinces, as an identity marker. And even still, in the Irish language, a province today, even though there are today 4 provinces in Ireland, a province today is known as they're known as Cúigi, which means a fifth. So even the provinces today in the Irish language are called Cúigi, which means a fifth. Now, moving on to the next slide, So, like I said, despite the fact that different kingdoms developed, like the province of Ulster didn't really function as one from at least 2,000 years. You had the Northern O'Neill in the north west, also known as the Kingdom of Alloch. We have the Kingdom of Oriel in the centre north. The Ullid, I suppose, this is probably the inheritant of the term Ulster. That was only in the east. So the fact that all these kingdoms came and went, there's another version of the map as well. The local people still use the 5 provinces as a kind of identity marker. This is a later 1400 map of Ireland where the provinces were just completely kind of gone as such, but the local people still kind of use the provinces as an identity marker. Anyway, now traces of the old Fir provinces of Ireland. Now these are Irish language dialect maps, and the Irish language, of course, was the dominant language in Ireland up until the 1800s, up to the famine times. And what's interesting, if you look at the map on the left, as you find Louth, North Meath spoke Ulster Irish. And I find that very interesting because, according to mythology, that part of Ireland wasn't part of Ulster for at least 3,000 years. But still in the 1800s, you had people in North Meath and Louth speaking the Ulster form of Irish. As you can see, even though it shows all of Kilkenny in Munster Irish, by tradition it was actually the River Nore, which was the boundary between Munster and Leinster Irish. So just that there's evidence there going back to ancient times that even the Irish language dialects of the 1800s were reflecting on a much older time. There's another map I found, it's a bit blurry, but again, as you can see, this is Oriel Irish, they call it. It's a form of Ulster Irish, and it included North Meath and Louth. So these are just different versions of the map. And just compare that to the Firebog boundaries, where we had Louth and North Meath being part of Ulster in ancient times. Compare that then with the modern map of Ireland. Yeah. So that, and as you can see, just on the side, of course, the forms of Gaelic were also spoken in Scotland and the Isle of Man, and a form of Gaelic spoken, of course, in Nova Scotia in Canada. So moving on from that, then, so other things which are interesting is that if you look at the ecclesiastical provinces of Ireland, these are the church religious provinces of Ireland, and there are 4. So you have Armagh in the north, you have Tuam in the west, you have Cashel in the southwest, and you have Dublin in the southeast. Now, it might be hard to see the map, but when my cursor's moving, that's where the boundaries were of the provinces. And they met not too far off where Clonmacnoise is. That's the reason for the geography of Ireland's 4 ecclesiastical provinces. Clonmacnoise was the dominant monastery in Ireland. And note also, that's where the Escoriada, that old road I mentioned, across the Shannon as well. So it's interesting that the 4 ecclesiastical provinces meet at Clonmacnoise, with a similar thing whereby the old Firbog provinces met at Uisneach. So yeah, and of course, counties Meath and Westmeath were part of the northern province of Armagh, and that's where you have the term. In Ireland, you'll have the Archdiocese of Armagh and the Archdiocese of Cashel, the Archdiocese of Dublin, the Archdiocese of Tuam. But that's the maps. That's the 4 ecclesiastical provinces. Anyway, so moving on from that, then. So now I'm going to talk quick, and I don't want to bore you too much. Can everybody still hear me? I'm just curious.
Oh yes.
Still hearing that a bit. So we'll be finishing soon now. I don't want to bore you all too much, But there are around Ireland, there's different trenches, ditches, and fortifications that can be found, which lie on the old Firbog provinces of Ireland. And this is one called the Dunclaw. And for those of you who are from the Cavan or Longford area, you might find this interesting. So again, the original Firbog boundary of Connacht was via the Shannon, the Inny, and the Erne. And with the exception of this small piece of land between the Erne and the Inny, Connacht was effectively an island using rivers. But there's an ancient ditch or frontier that was built between those 2 rivers, and it's the Dunclaw. And you can still find it today. That's the Dunclaw. It runs from Loch Gowna, which is the Erne is, River Erne. Sorry, I just dropped a slide. And we Loch Kinneal for the River Inny. So just that's I find that interesting. And here's traces of the Dunclaw. So if you look at here, see this kind of scar in the landscape. That's what the Dunclaw. That's what remains of the Dunclaw are running. And here as well, that's a remain of the Dunclaw as well. That line there. And in the area, there's all these different forts as well. So it's quite a fortified area, maintaining that, you're in kind of boundary country, Another one is the Clia Dove. So the Clia Dove is a frontier, a fortification that ran from what's now Cork City to Limerick City. And a trace of it can be found just there on the map, so sorry, I'm just trying to read it there now. So yeah, just to the of Mallow, you could find remains of the Clia Dove. And of course, the Firebog did temporarily partition Munster into two. Now, and then there's the remains of the Clia Dove. That's all I could find in the internet. But there's the Scarva there. That there is the remains of a Bronze Age fortification that once partitioned Munster. Another one is the Ratduff Trench. So the Ratduff Trench lies in County Kilkenny. And it ran between the rivers Barrow and Nore. And where it comes from is that, according to tradition, the Nore was the original boundary of the provinces of Leinster and Munster. But whenever the Milesians came along, that last wave of people, they're meant to have taken some land across the Nore up to the Barrow. But that fortification marks the boundary of the Milesian later boundaries of Irish provinces. I can find bits today and now. These are black and white now, but these are traces anyway of the Ratduff Trench. So that run along there, if you see my cursor, that's the Ratduff Trench there. This guy here, that there bit there is the Ratduff Trench. And these are just markings, actually, just where it once crossed there in that road. And this location, the Ratduff Trench, crossed the road there as well. And then lastly, for those who are from the Ulster part of the world, there was a fortification that ran along the side of Ulster called the Black Pigs Dyke. And there's different parts of it can be found today. So here, roughly on the modern Monaghan and Cavan boundary, you can see it there. And there's also bits here up the run on the boundary between Leitrim and Fermanagh. But that was the Black Pigs Dyke. There's a version of it as well. And according to tradition, whenever the Danann, that second last wave of people came to Ireland, the boundary, the province of Meath moved east. And the boundary between Ulster and the rest of Ireland was kind of moved a bit as well. And this Black Pigs Dyke is said to have been created. And bits of it can be found today. So this is remains of the Black Pig Dyke. This is in West County Monaghan. And just where my cursor is, that formation there is the Black Pigs Dyke. This is up here on the Fermanagh Leitrim boundary. That was excavated in recent times. This is in Fermanagh as well. You can just see it in the distance there as well. That's the Black Pigs Dyke. And here in the bottom right, those of you who are from County Monaghan, you might know of a steel pig monument on the Castleblaney Road, the Dublin Derry Road through Monaghan. And the reason for that steel pig is that is where the Black Pigs Dyke once crossed the road. Whenever that road was built, just to mark the Black Pigs Dyke, that's what that pig there was put. So when who are from Monaghan wonder why there's a random pig monument on the side of the road, that was for an ancient ditch that once ran across South Monaghan. Now, into the 1600s then, this is like a 1600s map of Ireland. So province of Meath kind of expanded with the O'Neill dynasty up into the northwest of Ireland. And a sixth province was created, the province of Oriel. And I guess the province of Ulster was kind of inherited by this land here just to the east of the Bann. So effectively at that stage, there was 6 provinces. And also the monastery tradition of Ireland was big at the time. So many monasteries in Ireland were built at the time in the 600s. Now, so moving on, then the Vikings then came to Ireland. And the Vikings then, they had settlements, particularly in Dublin, Wexford, Waterford, Cork, and Limerick. But what appeared on the scene is that the Kingdom of Breffni appeared. And also the Kingdom of Ossory appeared. These are like provincial frontier kingdoms. So Ossory appeared on the boundary between Leinster and Munster, and Breffni appeared between Connacht and Ulster. Also, the O'Neill territories were kind of split, with Breffni forming between the two. Now, then the Normans came to Ireland. Then we're talking in the 1100s, and a huge amount of land was dispossessed from Gaelic Ireland, held in Norman hands. So the map of Ireland drastically changed, and the province system very much stopped from that point forward. But even going forward, the Normans did integrate very much into Gaelic Irish society, and they adopted the Irish language, and they became more Irish than the Irish themselves. So they very much became part of Irish society, the Normans. This is a later 1400 map of Ireland. Like, so as you can see, the provinces are very much all gone, Note, but in the southeast, we got three kingdoms appeared. We have the kingdoms of Ormond, Desmond, and Thomond, even though it says O'Brien here in County Clare, that was the kingdom of Thomond. And they refer to Munster. So Ormond means East Munster in Irish, Desmond means South Munster in Irish, Thomond means North Munster in Irish. So that was that there basically. Now 1500s, 1600s, then things went a bit crazy. And people called the British, you might have heard them, I don't know, but they came to colonize Ireland. But in doing so, anyway, they created some very detailed maps of Ireland. And so these are some of the first maps created by the British of Ireland. So this map's actually upside down. It's in Latin, but here we have Mumna, which is Latin for Munster. We got Ligona, the Latin for Leinster. Up here is Ulster, Ullenda, and Connacht is here. And over here is another map of Ireland as well. So one that the British did, so. And then here also then at the same time then the counties of Ireland will be standardised. And all those counties will be based on local kingdoms and ecclesiastical provinces as well. They're all standardized, basically, And yeah. So I just let somebody in there, but we're all good. So to share here again, so. Yeah. Sure.
He's trying to change.
Right. We'll be finished soon, everybody. I don't want to bore you too much. So anyways, the county with the shires of Ireland were created. They were standardized. But what's interesting is whenever the British mapped Ireland, they kind of brought back the province system. And it seems that they were talking to the local Irish. And even though all these kingdoms had appeared over time, the local Irish were still talking about these provinces. And the British brought back the province system. And Ulster became one single province again. So there's different maps that the British created of Ireland with the provinces being brought back. And as you can see, County Clare was part of Connacht. And Louth was part of Ulster. So now, what was interesting on these maps as well is that often the River Erne is being used as a boundary marker between Ulster and Connacht. All these here have the Erne as boundary marker. Now, the Erne hasn't been the boundary between Ulster and Connacht for at least 3,000 years at that stage. So again, the British were listening to the native Irish and being told about these boundaries. As a matter of fact, we were probably confusing the British. They're probably thinking, what is it with these people? You have kingdoms, you don't have kingdoms, you have provinces. So anyway, it's just interesting that these maps of Ireland show the Erne as being a boundary marker between Ulster and Connacht, and that wasn't the case for these 3,000 years. And then this is our last slide. You'd be glad to hear this. Then in 1666, the provinces of Ireland and counties were all standardised, and the map of Ireland that we know today was created. The province of Meath was omitted. It remain. It still lives on via the counties of Meath and Westmeath, but we have 32 counties and spread across the 4 provinces. So now that's it, and thanks for bearing with me. I hope I haven't bored this all too much. Okay. But that was the idea tonight.
That's fine. That's fine, brother.
Have any questions, anybody, or do you want to chat or whatever,